was the biggest plot twist in your life? Story 1. Not a very happy one. I'll make it as short as possible, posted about this before. Met my bio dad when I was 23. After a couple years, he invited myself and my toddler son to come live with him as I was struggling financially. Wanted to put me in his will. His wife at the time suggested a paternity test. To be sure, I get the mail in, swab your cheek one. 6 weeks later, the results came back that he wasn't the dad. She kicked me out. I was homeless, dropped my son off with his father and explained everything. Said, give me 3 months to work and save so I could get an apartment again. Father of my son claimed abandonment without telling me and got full custody. Plot twist. 2 weeks after that, bio dad's wife flipped out and in her moment of crazy admitted her triumph of swabbing her own cheek and sending it under my name for the paternity test. We've since retested and he's my father. Story 2. I've posted it before, but it seems relevant. I married a girl who implied she would kill herself if she was without me. I hopped on a cavalcade of abuse and infidelity for 10 years, punctuated with her stints in an institution. I was so stressed out by her that I would literally get heart palpitations before she came home from any of these stays. Luckily, I was bailed out when she fell in love with her best friend and took off. I filed for divorce, which took another year because my spiteful ex wanted to punish me by delaying her signature. Borderline personality disorder is not fun. There is a happy ending, however. The divorce finally went through, and I decided to take a little in-town vacation. I got a nice hotel room and treated myself to an elaborate dinner. When I had finished my fantastic meal, I gushed to the waiter that it was the best I'd eaten. She told me that the chef was available if I wanted to meet her. Being the Irish gabber that I am, I gladly accepted. A few minutes later, the chef came to my table and we had what could only be described as a love-at-first-sight moment. I'm not even sure what we said to each other, if anything. At first, I asked if she was free after her shift and we have been together ever since. Story 3. After losing 3 kids to miscarriage and infertility, my wife and I started the process of an adoption. Days after we sent all the final paperwork off to China, we found out my wife was also expecting twins. I now have 3 11-year-olds, 7 weeks apart in age. Story 4. I thought my brother was happy and confident, and that I was the depressed loser. He killed himself, and now I have to pick up my weight and go through life without him. Story 5. My mom divorced my dad when I was 15 for someone on World of Warcraft Edit. Wow, this blew up. So far, I'm not who any of you think I am. I forgot to mention that my boyfriend and I also met on WoW around the same time, and we'll be having our 4-year anniversary next week. So that's a great plot twist too. Thanks, Blizzard, for being the best matchmaker NA. Story 6. Brother survived suicide attempt 14 years ago. Mother survived suicide attempt 7 years ago. Didn't recognize the signs. Boyfriend committed suicide. Story 7. Gave up learning. German aged 14. I was studying French as well and used it far more often. I remember saying, when will I need German after this? At 24, I got a job in Austria. The language of Austria is German. 14-year-old me didn't think 10 years ahead. Story 8. Pretty much coasting with zero responsibility up to about 27 years old. Then, hey, you've got a brain tumor. And also your mom has cancer. Have a fun few years, fam. Story 9. I recently, 5 months ago, moved out from a friend's house where I lived for almost 3 years. He was arrested 2 weeks ago for possession and distribution of child. Story 10. Had a best friend growing up from who was also my neighbor. Siblings always said that I looked like him, and that it would be funny if we did a DNA test. Years go by and we are both in our late 20s, and he on a whim does the Ancestry.com DNA swab. Turns out he matches with my family. He's my half-brother and dad had to explain a lot that day. Story 11. Spent all of childhood and adolescence wondering where all the cute boys were and waiting for the right one. Thought that maybe I just had very high standards. Yup, lesbian. Story 12. When I was 19, I attended the wedding of a friend I had feelings for. I clearly remember thinking, what a shame. He could do so much better. 12 years later, he's my husband now. Story 13. When I went from being a depressed kid living in the middle of nowhere who got to go to a concert every 5 years if I was lucky, to a heavy metal concert photographer attending 50 or more shows a year. Story 14. Went traveling with my girlfriend of 4 years. Met an amazing person. All became best friends and traveled with each other for 4 months. Got matching tattoos as a souvenir of our amazing time. Plot twist. Girlfriend cheated on me with that person we had become best friends with every night in the last week. Whilst I was in the same room, asleep. Found out through fixing her broken phone for her and the messages coming through. Edit. I think everyone is assuming I'm a dude. That's okay, but everyone is a female in this situation. Don't think that changes much, but thought it was worth a mention. Thanks so much to everyone for the support. It honestly means the world. If anyone ever needs to talk about the shitty cards life deals, I'm here to talk. Peace and love. Story 15. I grew up winning loads of free pizza for being a bookworm, not to mention having a trophy case full of academic regalia. Plot twist. IRL social skills matter far more than knowing what two rivers merge to form the Ohio. Story 16. I was 19 and casually seeing a girl. Then one day I found a lump in one of my testicles while I was taking a shower. Went to the doctor and it turned out that it was cancer and that they would have to remove it. Oh, and I would have to have at least 2 rounds of the most intensive chemo out there if I wanted to not die. There was also the very strong chance that I would be sterile for the rest of my life. Realizing that this was something that I might not survive, I ended things and dropped off the face of the planet for the girl I was seeing, as I didn't want to end up being the dead boyfriend. She found out what was going on though, and basically insisted that she be with me through it all. She came to every single 8-10 hour chemo session and helped me through recovery. Fast forward 6 years, and we are happily married with 2 kids and our third on the way. Story 17. I was contacted in July to take a DNA test to see if I was the father of a 2-year-old in Norway. I am in the US 99.9996% match in August. Best plot twist of my life. Story 18. My father died when I was 6. My mom told me it was a heart attack while he was out at sea with the Navy. In my teens, I assumed she might have been covering up something bad about him to spare my feelings, and maybe he killed himself or died of a drug overdose or something because he wasn't fat or unhealthy. Cut to 20 years later, and 7 of the 8 siblings in his family have died before the age of 60 because of heart disease-related issues. I'm starting to think it wasn't a lie. Edit. Lot of upvotes and suggestions. I go to a doctor. I developed diabetes and high blood pressure by the age of 22 and have been treating it for over a decade now. Uphill battle, but thanks for the kind words. Story 19. I was drug addicted once and a very good friend gave birth. I visited her in the hospital and hold the newborn. Not my child, but I said to my inner self, with this dirty hands you can't hold a baby. That's when I stopped and never consumed drugs. Story 20. Had an incredibly awesome time with a girl, turns out, as her mother, divorced, asked her about me, that my father used to visit her mother around the time the girl was conceived. Story 21. Since I was 13, I have had horrible foot pain whenever I walk more than an hour. When I worked at my church bookstore, I would often have to sit for the majority of the time I was there. My ankle would swell up, and if it was really bad, my knee would too. Every photo of me we have taken at Disney or Universal, I am in a wheelchair. We never really got a conclusive diagnosis. I was diagnosed with juvenile arthritis, an unspecified autoimmune disorder, and even a ganglion cyst. After an MRI, a partly fused bone was discovered in my ankle. A single surgery was all it would take to fix it, or at least lessen the pain. If only we had known that back then. Story 22. Meeting my husband totally changed my life. Before I met him, I kinda just submitted to the idea that I was gonna be the 40-year-old lady who worked at Dairy Mart, always on the verge of poverty, and lived with 20 cats in an apartment not fit for human habitation. I don't see what he saw in me at the time. I hadn't showered in a week, was wearing clothes full of holes, was smoking cheap cigs like a chimney, and hadn't brushed my teeth in like 3 days. Mind you, my husband comes from extreme wealth, so it's even more surprising that he thought I was worth talking to, much less worth hitting on. But we hit it off the moment we started talking, and for the first time in my life, I felt a little bit of hope for myself. I mean, this amazing guy was hitting on me, maybe I wasn't so awful. Fast forward 3 years, we are now married. I have won the battle with my depression and anxiety. We live a humble but healthy life. He is about to start a rather lucrative career that he is excited about. We are about to get a dog and generally have a normal and happy life. Never in a million years thought I would be this happy. He spoils me like crazy and gives me hope during my rarer dark moments. I know for a fact that he saved my life. Story 23. Grew up uber rich. My dad was a real estate mogul in the European country I grew up in. Seriously, no worries in the world. Life was fucking perfect. Then, one day, a bunch of government officials, heavily armed, raid our home, take all the contents of my dad's office, take him away, and now he's in jail for fraud money laundering. Yeah, the money isn't there anymore. My family was torn apart, and because I missed being a spoiled brat, I drank myself into oblivion for 2 years. Now I just function like anyone else. Work full-time at a restaurant, internship, college classes. It is just interesting making the mental shift from knowing your life will be worry-free and extraordinary because of nothing I had accomplished to not knowing what my future will look like and working hard to earn a spot in this world. Story 24. I was sitting in the yard with my 18-month-old daughter watching her play in the kiddie pool. I heard the phone ring, ran inside to answer it, and it was a call from our adoption agency. They told me that a baby boy had just been born. His biological mom didn't make an adoption plan, but knew she couldn't take care of him. He was in the NICU and had a heart defect that would require surgery. They asked if we would like to adopt. We didn't know much. We had no information on prenatal care and didn't know how serious his heart condition was, other than that he would need at least one surgery to correct it. For some reason, we still said yes. He is now a totally healthy 12-year-old boy. He is a bright kid and is a three-sport athlete. He fits into our family perfectly, and I couldn't imagine life without him. But I did not expect that summer day to change our lives forever. Story 25. This one is good. Literally one of the luckiest and the best things that happened to me. When I finished secondary school at 15-year-old, I had so poor grades that I was not selected to any high school I applied. I had no plan for my life. Then my parents saw that local vocational school, Church College, was starting to try out combining college and high school. Not sure if those are correct terms for them since I'm not from English-speaking country, but I got in just by signing the paper. It took 4 years, but after that I went to University of Applied Sciences and here I am now. Product development engineer and working for big company, planning power plants. Story 26. I was a typical indoorsy white kid, in love with Lego, computers, movies, games, TV shows, photography, books, arts. I have eczema and albinism, and I'm allergic to grass, all of which was even worse as a kid. I hated being outdoors for fun, let alone chores. And mowing grass was my least favorite of all. So what's the plot twist? Fast forward a few years and I got a job as a landscaper. I loved my job and was so good at it my crew was sent to fix up the places that other crews screwed up. I even got the chance to maintain the holiday property of the CEO of Starbucks. Story 27. Went on holiday in Spain as a kid. Didn't like, don't want to ever go back there. Barely attend Spanish classes at school because why bother? Well, I've been happily living in Spain for the past 10 years. Story 28. Got married, quit job, and moved out of parents' house to live with a buddy in a different state while wife was in boot camp for a few months. She finishes boot camp and decided to divorce me. Now I'm flat broke and have to move back in with my parents. Age 27. Story 29. Was the youngest PhD student at my entire college. Supervisor decided he didn't feel like marking my thesis, so it got left under a desk, and I was forgotten about. Went from promising young scientist getting job offers while studying to not being able to get work in my field because of a did not complete on my academic record. Story 30. Loser college. Drop out considering offing myself and got a call from my best friend that our company we started just got funded a lot of money and that we're moving in 3 weeks. Story 31. My freshman year of high school, a female friend of mine asked me to homecoming and I shut her down pretty hard. Not maliciously, of course. I was just a stupid, dense teenage boy. We both went on to date other people and ended up in super long-lasting toxic relationships. 3 days ago, I married that girl that I was such an idiot to turn down. Story 32. In 2007, I decided on a whim to go to university since everyone I knew was doing it, and I figured it couldn't hurt to have a degree. In 2016, I started as a lecturer at the same university teaching the same course I graduated in. Story 33 was in love with my now wife when I first met her aged 13. It was never the right time for us to get together. She was either with someone, or I was. I actually told a less serious GF when I was around 18 that she, wife, was the one. Shouted her name out in my sleep a few years later whilst I was with another girl, which went down well as you can imagine. In late 20s, found out through someone else that she'd moved to Australia. I'm English, so I gave up. Forgot about her to an extent. Fast forward to early 30s. Split up with a girl. She split up with me, actually. That was on the Sunday. 2 days later, after I'm walking away from bank where I've been to arrange loan to buy now ex-girlfriend out of house, and I bump into future wife, who returned permanently from Australia the same day I'd split with my ex. We've now been together 12 years and have a 10-year-old son. Within 6 months of bumping into her, we were living together. Within 9 months, she was pregnant. When you know, then you know. She drives me insane on a daily basis now, but that's an entirely different story. Story 34. Spent a decade near enough in a spiral of depression. Didn't realize it was what it was until halfway through. Every day's a fight, but I'm winning now. Story 35. When I was diagnosed with HIV, I alerted the guy I was with. It was a relationship based on mainly on, to get himself checked out, which he said he turned up negative. I was pretty distant with people for a long while, so we lost contact for 2 years until he called me one day to catch up as he had some news. We meet up and he wanted to tell me he has Hodgkin's lymphoma, cancer. During the catch-up, I find out he actually had a HIV-positive diagnosis a few years back, but he doesn't believe that HIV exists. So what he has is actually an AIDS-related illness. So I discover that I got HIV from a guy that doesn't believe it is real. And he also believes that he can cure himself from cancer by alkalizing his blood and using an experimental device from Russia. And in a past life, he was from Atlantis. Fast forward 6 months or so, and I'm visiting him in hospital when a friend of his drops in and gives him some kind of metal plate that he's supposed to strap to his body that will shrink his lymphoma to nothing in days. This friend charged him money to loan this device. Fast forward 3 months and the cancer is too far spread to be cured. That was the last time I saw him. I found out he died a few months later on some feeling that I should check the obituary section in the newspaper, and it turned out that his family had his funeral a couple weeks ago. He coincidentally is buried about 20 meters from my dad's cemetery plot, which is pretty convenient. Story 36 at the DMV waiting to take my driver's test. Me. Mom. Why does my social security card have a different last name on it? Mom. Me. Mom. Moments later. DMV lady. Why does his social security card have a different last name on it? We can't let him have a permit until you get this fixed. Why is it different? Mom. Without ever looking at me. Because before today, he didn't know he was adopted. Story 37. I was doing pretty good in life. Then one afternoon, I crashed my dirt bike and became a quadriplegic. One of a plot twist. But I adapted, and am doing great again. Story 38. TW. Miscarriage. 2017 is basically one big plot twist for me. Met my man online and started an online relationship after a really toxic relationship. Planned on moving me to where he's at in August and all is well. We got pregnant in March when I went to visit him. So everything had to be sped up and I moved to him in May. 2 days after I got there, I miscarried. After about a month of applying for jobs at hundreds of places, I had one office call me back and is paying me almost twice what I expected with benefits. We've been renting a room looking for places with no luck, expecting to be where we were at for another year. Then bam, we found a rent-to-own $100 less than the monthly rent we expected. Very blessed. Very happy. Story 39. In my relationship drama thriller, it turns out I was the bad guy all along. The signs were there, but I've never been good at figuring out twists or seeing the foreshadowing. Story 40. When my ex left, it was very sudden. Just, I don't want to be married anymore. I don't want to be a mother anymore. Boom. That was it. I find out she's been conversing with someone online, ironically because I encouraged her to. She complained about not having a social life because we had 3 small kids, 954. We got into Lost, and I found a forum for discussions. She got super into it, but mostly because of all the forum drama. Apparently everyone was internet cheating on everyone. A few months later, she's leaving me on Thanksgiving Day. She blamed me for everything, of course, and I bought most of it like an idiot. Come to find out the guy she left me for is transgender. Ultimately, he became a woman and left her for another man, last I heard. Story 41. I got laid off from my job, which was the only excuse I had to stay in the town I was in, and loved, and not move to be with my boyfriend. Got laid off, moved to be with him, we moved back home together. Now we're married and building a house in the city I love so much. I'm so happy, all because I lost my job. I would have been too scared to make the jump otherwise. Story 42. On deck 31st, 2001, I drank a 1 to 2 a glass of campaign and got a stomachache. 20 plus years of alcoholism came to an end. No 12-step programs, no meetings, no support groups. Have not had a drink of any kind since. Have no desire to have one. Story 43. Dad died, brother died, mom did heroin, got sent to jail, homeless, sent to jail again, turned 16, mom dies, then I met my girlfriend and now I'm a volunteer mechanic attending college for a CS degree. Story 44. Girlfriend of 4 years surprise dumped me. 2 weeks later had a seizure and discovered I had a brain tumor. Edit. For those that have asked, I couldn't be better. I had a generalized seizure last October and was diagnosed the same month and have been on seizure medication since. Would not recommend to take. The stuff sucks. I had a tumor about 3 cm in diameter in my left parietal lobe, which after brain surgery in January was diagnosed as a benign low-grade ganglioglioma. As of a few weeks ago, my MRI showed no trace of any regrowth and will be off of the medication come February. As for the girl situation, the tumor gave me a new perspective on life, and I have been able to move past my ex quicker than I imagined. I am seeing a girl who is leagues above what my ex was. Last October, I never thought I'd be in the position I am in today and am thankful for every minute of it. Story 45. Found out at 30 years old that my parents were divorced for 12 years when I was a kid, and that my dad, who is now super pious and religious, cheated on my mom with his brother-in-law's wife. Total mindfuck. Story 46. My mom told me my dad didn't want anything to do with me. He lived about 5 minutes away from me my whole life, but always refused to see me when I was a kid. I got older and resentful, and around 13 I stopped trying to make contact. The only time I spent with him was when my mom randomly dropped me off at his house when I was about 14, so he could watch me for a few hours. I ended up painting his kitchen for him, and then, when she came to pick me up, they fucked loudly in the room next to me. Fast forward 17 years and my mom gets drunk and proceeds to tell me that he's not even my father, hence why he wasn't on my birth certificate. She was apparently sleeping with numerous men at that time and says, my dad doesn't think I'm even his. Could have saved almost 2 decades of anger and hurt towards this man if she had just not told me that he was my dad. Story 47. Unexpectedly fired from my job due to a complete BS reason. I was hideously ill-prepared for such an event and had no savings. Was on the verge of being homeless. Could not get another job due to being honest about my being fired for breach of contract. Roughly 8 weeks after losing my job, I am technically homeless. But that's only because I'm standing in the airport half a world away in Sydney, Australia to make my way to temporary accommodation, 2 days before I start my new job. 2 weeks after arriving, I'm sharing a house by the beach with a very pretty female housemate from Romania who has a habit of walking around the place in just her underwear. So it turned out pretty well. Story 48. Made a slingshot to use at Halloween. Wanted to shoot someone I hated? All us friends gather at park included guy I hate. Aim at his face. Guilt overcame me, so I shot the pole next to him. Ricocheted off pole and hit guy I hate in the eye. Story 49. Well, besides finding my drug-addicted father hanging from the staircase by a vacuum cleaner cord, I found out that he has a 23-year-old daughter with another woman. Story 50. When I swore off men, decided to just use them and dump them, and almost immediately met the man who swept me off my feet, became my husband. I really did a job at the just use them and dump them method. Story 51. My best friend spent a year telling me I should try out her friend with benefits guy. He and I were pals, but didn't know each other very well at the time. Because he's so much fun in and out of the sack, I resisted because I hoped they'd fall in love. She'd never been interested in romantic entanglements. Never spent more than a weekend with a guy. And because I thought he was too young for me, he looked several years younger than he was. Eventually, he hit on me directly in a way that piqued my interest, and we started a summertime fling, both swearing it was just friends with benefits. Less than 2 months later, he blurted, "I love you," and my immediate reply was, "Thank God you said it first." We spent a few more months attempting to resist anything like a commitment, but by the end of the year, he'd moved in with me. 18 years later, we're married, and still wildly in love. We just bought a house recently. Best friend was thrilled for us both, officiated at our wedding, and continues to very happily be a spinster with cats. Story 52. The moment after my mom, who I hated, died, when one day a month after, I suddenly found myself doing something and stopped. I realized I had become exactly her. I became that which I hated. I never hit my children. I rarely yelled, but it didn't matter. I thought like she did, and I thought, well, I'm not really a bad person. I'm just messed up from my upbringing, but doing the best I can for my family despite setbacks and whatnot. I immediately burst into tears and laid in bed, ugly sobbing and feeling terrible for how coldly I treated her. Even though in her final years, I made her comfortable and took care of her along with my dad. She had brain damage and dementia, and for 5 long years she languished. She was combative, and it's difficult to take loving care of someone who was so terrible to you as a child. I did absolutely love on and forgive my mother as she was in her deathbed, before my dad asked me to pull the plug, so he would not have to bear that emotional burden. Anyway, since that moment, I stopped defining my entire existence around blaming her for everything, and went into therapy and saw a psychiatrist again. But this time, I said nothing and allowed them to ask me questions and identify it on their own. I only gave them one thing. I have become my mother, and I'm sorry I didn't see that. I want my kids to love me, but I hated my mother. I want my kids to feel loved, but my mother couldn't or didn't love me. But I realized she was just very dysfunctional. I want to fix things so I can be an even better parent and person. I want to show my mom it is possible and forgive her with my life to show her I understand. Yeah, something like that. It's been a year, but me as a person has turned around. I have defined myself as myself, not my mother's daughter, and am slowly retraining myself to not be so boisterous yet insecure, afraid yet competent, things like that. My children feel affection and warmth from me, and I feel connected to them in a way I couldn't build before she died. I will mourn every day that I did not understand the pain and terrible feelings she must have gone through actively screwing up her kids, but that was all she knew, and something caused her to just succumb to it and let it consume her. Her sickness, her abuse, her sadness, and anger, but not me. It's slow going, but I let go of career and proving myself to my parents or showing up my mom and living for me so I can live for my family. And I can say, my mom gave me that. Just wish I realized it sooner so I could help her forgive herself. Yeah, like that. Story 53. Until the age of 13, I was the happiest kid in my neighborhood and the most skilled one in athletics. I had the highest grades in school, the best toys you could ask for, and I was skilled in arts and crafts and music, whose junior band I used to lead, and made my own stuff for convenience. Then I was bullied to the point where I attempted suicide thrice, destroyed my life, my brains, and so on. I was afraid of stepping out of my house for a few years, shut myself in and became a recluse. I recovered a bit and got into college and retained good marks, but now I have only few friends, a rare skin disease, trouble with trusting friendly people fast enough, and still planning to kill myself in a few years. Edit. Thank you with all my heart for the incredibly kind words, people. It is things like these that I still have some hope for humanity left. Story 54. Mom and Dad got divorced. Mom says, "Sorry, he's not your dad. We got married when you were 3 and everyone just decided not to tell you. Your dad is RSS, and who I thought was my dad left straight after the divorce. and my real dad doesn't want to know me. Story 55. I spent nearly my entire life searching for my biological father. We finally found one another and made arrangements to meet in person when he suddenly fell ill. I met my father for the first time at Fort Custer National Cemetery as he lay peacefully in his casket. Story 56. Living a nice life, then I go to college. Got raped, got cancer, lost a leg, was broke as suicidal, declared bankruptcy. Gave myself one last week. If nothing good happened, I was going to kill myself. One of the other patients in my cancer group had a dad who was a malpractice attorney. He thought I had a case. Fine. I figured I'd see this through. While I'm waiting on that to figure itself out, I graduate and get a job I really like that makes good money. I win the lawsuit. I get transferred to the same part of the company as my best friend in college. We live together. We get married. Things aren't always perfect, but did they get better? Story 57. I married when I was 20. After college, my wife recommended that I go to grad school in her home state so she could be closer to her family. Turns out the only reason she wanted me to do that would be so that it would be easier for her to leave me. Once we moved back to her home state, she cheated on me, racked up a bunch of debt in my name, and left me. I was in a dark place for a while, but I ended up dating a lot of amazing women and ultimately found my actual soulmate. We've been together for 7 years now and are still extremely happy. Meanwhile, my ex-wife got addicted to drugs, has a criminal record, and had to declare bankruptcy. Karma can be a sometimes. Story 58. Been struggling with depression since I was around 10. I'm 18 now. Things were looking up. I almost got my GED, and I'm taking community college classes while I apply to art school, working at a program that changed my life teaching music to kids, have a great new therapist, and things seem to be looking up. Plot twist. My grandmother died. She was a Holocaust survivor and the heart of my mom's family. My mom had been with her when she passed, and my dad, my older sister, and I went down for the funeral. We're Jewish. We have the funeral within a week of the death. And as soon as we got into the hotel room, I hugged my mom, and she just broke down sobbing. Those big, huge sobs were there, gasping and shaking. Nothing has ever hurt me more. My sister and I went back up early because she had work and I had school. I skipped class that whole week and just got drunk and high every day and cried and petted my dog. I still can't believe she's gone. It doesn't feel real. I miss her so much. She worked 3 jobs and raised 3 kids as a single mom in a country where she barely spoke the language. I love you so much, Baba Sima. I miss you every day. Story 59. Got a full tuition scholarship to my dream school. Got a letter a week later saying it was a mistake. Got a full tuition scholarship to my second choice school. I love it here. Fuck Delaware Valley. Story 60. I'm barely a 5'10" in looks. Nerdy as wow, no lifer. At the time anyway. Was sitting on my PC like any other day when a random girl I went to high school with messaged me if I was interested in hanging out with her sister. Now I'm married to said sister who's way out of my league. Sometimes I still don't believe it. Story 61. I was dating a girl for half of high school and through my first year of college. Thought I was going to have a real future with her. She cheated on me within a month of our second year. I haven't been the same since. Story 62. My mom, 55 at the time, asked me to visit her while she had surgery to remove an ovarian cyst. It was an outpatient procedure and asked me to drop her off and take her home a couple hours later. The plot twist came when the doctor explained that it was stage 4 cancer and she probably had 6 months to live. Life is fleeting. Enjoy every second that you can. Story 63. When I was 13, I saw a flyer for something called capoeira, which was some type of dance fighting. I was really interested in it, but my mother laughed at me because I was really overweight. When I got to college, I joined a martial arts group that had a capoeira teacher and found his teacher was from my hometown. I have been doing capoeira for 7 years now and lost 60 lbs. I am the second highest ranking student in that school. Story 64. Married my high school sweetheart. It was a storybook love story. We supported each other. In our early 20s, we moved across the country with no plan at all, no jobs, no place to live, and it worked out. We eventually both got a master's degree. She became a licensed therapist. I got my MBA and got a good job at a hospital. We bought a house. Things were going great. She had a lump on her ovary, no problem, it was benign. Treatment was dependent on our plans to have kids. We had talked about having kids, but we were never in a hurry. We were in our early 30s at this point. We decided we would eventually like to have kids, so they surgically removed the bump and put her on hormone therapy. So here is the plot twist. Turns out she is bipolar, and the hormones kind of set her off. She gets completely psychotic and delusional, and ends up hospitalized and out of touch with reality for about 6 months. I am with her the whole way. She eventually gets clear and is on medication that controls it. She is symptom-free for a year. Her psych doc chalks the event up to the hormone therapy and takes her off the meds. She is still fine. We get pregnant. We have the baby. One day she is nursing the baby and she tells me, "There are cameras in the lights. Yakin, she has her second episode. I can't describe how horrible these episodes are. She is paranoid and delusional, and she thinks she is completely fine. She is treatment resistant and unwilling to go to the hospital. It's another hard 6 months before she finally comes out of it. Now she knows she is bipolar. She takes meds every day. Her biggest fear is that she will get sick in front of our daughter. She gets another job, I get a raise and an opportunity for a promotion if we move. We move, she is fine for 2 years. One day, she is feeling off, so she goes to her doc. This is the start of the third episode. So here is the other plot twist. We don't make it through this one. She gets violent. She quits her job, even though she's currently on disability. She drains the checking account. The third time she hits me, it is in front of the kid. She is so treatment resistant, I just need to protect myself and the kid. So I leave her. We were together for 20 years. We were supposed to grow old together. Now I'm a single dad, and after almost a year, she is finally coming out of it. So the next chapter of my life is starting with a custody battle.